Tuesday was the deadline for teams to make deals in the National Football League, and the biggest one was Bradley Chubb, the Broncos pass rusher, going over to the Miami Dolphins. It also followed with an extension for Chubb that he just signed 5 years, $119 million, $63.2 million in guaranteed money. What was your reaction seeing Chubb now going to the Dolphins in an area where they needed a little bit of help there with their pass rush?
So let's put the timeline in perspective, right? So last week we knew that Denver had a one on the table for Chubb. And why is the one significant? Well, let's back up. So we know Denver was never going to sign Chubb to a long-term contract. They didn't really value where he's going to be as a player. They had other guys that could fill his role. Still a good player. I'm not minimizing that. Mm-hmm. But for a guy that's been hurt quite a bit in his career, they weren't going to invest all this money because they didn't have all that money. I mean, they got to be really careful with their resources. So they know they're not signing him. So that means the best they're going to get out of him is a compensatory third. So basically what they said to teams were, unless you give us a 2 or better, we're not trading. We'll hang on to him. We'll just get the compensatory 3. Miami comes in and offers the 1. Okay, now they got the 1 in their hand. They tell Miami, you can work out a deal. The Miami and the agent work out the frameworks of a deal. They kind of come to a consensus on, remember, all deals are about guaranteed money and about average per year in the first 3 years. Not the total sum that goes on Pro Football Talk. The average of the first 3 years. That's really what matters when you're doing these deals. The sum of the deal is what the agents promote, okay? Mm-hmm. The 3 years is what actually is really what matters. So guaranteed money and the 3 years. Once they agreed on that, then the trade went through. Had they not been able to agree on that, I'm not sure Miami would have given away their 1. But Miami got that deal done. Now, Miami had really no leverage. They were going to say yes pretty much to anything. They did. And so the deal goes through. And so what this is symbolic of, this trade here is symbolic of why there were 10 trades. Because when teams are willing to overpay for the compensatory value, i.e., you give me a 2 and I'm really only going to get a 3 for this guy. I get a 2 today, the 3 2 years from now doesn't mean as much. I'll take that deal. And I think that's really, when you break down all these deals, that's exactly. Rokon goes for a 2 from Baltimore, mm-hmm. right? They were never going to sign him. They couldn't get him signed to an extension with the Bears. So now he's Baltimore's problem, and they get a 2 as opposed to waiting on a compensatory 3.
You mentioned the Broncos not really wanting to pay Bradley Chubb. They paid Randy Gregory this past March in free agency, and also Baron Browning, one of their young linebackers on the edge there, has really kind of emerged as a promising player. So there really wasn't any room for Bradley Chubb to get the money that he wanted in Denver. But now that he's in Miami, does this elevate the Dolphins into Super Bowl contender status for you?
It's funny. So I've really enjoyed kind of going through what I have done lately on my power rankings is break down these teams into 19 categories, right? And so 2 of the categories are basically my subjective rating of the quarterbacks and the coaches and the coaching staff's entirety. And then the other 17 are what I think are what matters towards winning, right? And so if you grade in the top 7, you get a green code. If you're between 8 and 13, you get a yellow code. If you're 24 to 32, you get a red. Kind of, I'm really creative with my ideas here. Springsteen better watch out. Yeah. So anyway, so when you go through Miami's team, right, and you look at where they are as a total team in those categories, and I love how my timeline after Tua plays a good game, I get all the Tua lovers coming back. Nobody sent me anything after he almost threw 5 interceptions last week, but that's beside the point. But anyway, so when you go through Miami, they're not strong. Other than a category that basically accumulates your opponent's percentage of win, how many turnovers, all those things that go into what is called kind of luck. They're at 6th in the league in that category. They're not in any of the top categories. They're not. Where they're really weak is points per play defensively, and defensive sack per play. And this kind of helps in that area, or you think will help in that area. But I'm not sure it will. I think their secondary hasn't played to the level that they needed to play to, and their rush, I don't think Chubb is an elite, get the ball out quick rusher. I think he's a good rusher. I think he's a lot like, and I don't think he's as good as, but I think he's similar to Mario Williams, where there's not going to be instant pressure. Randy Gregory gives you instant pressure. He wins with speed and quickness, right? This kid that they just traded for, Jacob Martin, who went to the Jets this year, didn't play well for the Jets, but he has played well in his career. Mm-hmm. He gives that kind of instant pressure. Speed to power, speed to inside, those. I think it helps Miami. I think they went all their chips in, but they've got to get better in a lot of these categories that determine winning. I mean, scoring that many points against the Lions, great. Pat yourself on the back. Proud of Tua. Call him the best player in the league. We'll see where this goes.
I thought this was an interesting note, though, Michael, from Albert Breer. He said the Dolphins, they got 3 first-round picks back in the deal for what the 49ers, what they ended up going up to get Trey Lance. And all 3 of them, the Dolphins ended up trading them. And in those picks, they were able to get Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and now Bradley Chubb. So they're paid a pretty penny to get all of those guys. But those are guys that are proven commodities.
I mean, they're capped. They're going to be strapped. Now, Here's the reason they can do it is because Tua's contract is cheap. Mm-hmm. So this is year 3 of Tua?
Yep.
Right? All right. So they got another year on this cheap deal before they have to. So, the owner has made it very clear he wants to win. He's in his 80s. He wants to win immediately. So they just put all their chips in the middle of the table. And, they're worried about today and a little bit towards tomorrow, and we'll see if it can happen. But they had to get better on defense, Femi. I mean, they were not good enough so far on defense. They want to play man-to-man. They're in a double sync look. People kind of know what they're doing. And, people have moved the football effectively on them. And other than the game in Detroit, which Detroit had a 31-17 lead at the half, believe it or not. They scored 31 in the first half, didn't score a point in the second. I mean, people have moved the ball on them all day. It's just, they've had some opportunities. I mean, Pittsburgh's they're throwing the ball towards the end zone to win the game.
Yeah, they needed some help on defense. We'll see if Bradley Chubb can give them that help. Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.